Welcome to Codex, a history of video games. My name's Tyler Osby.
And I'm Mike Coletta.
And this week, we're covering still our Metroidvania stuff. So it's Mike's week to talk about some Castlevania stuff. And this is the big one, right? This is the Castlevania game everybody loves.
This is the Castlevania game to end all Castlevania games. We finally made it. We're talking about Castlevania Symphony of the Night.
All right.
Yeah, we're here. So my primary sources I use for this is there's actually a really good article on pushsquare.com. It's a feature. It's called The Making of Castlevania Symphony of the Night. You got to use that. I mean, it's in the title. And then there's also a YouTube video I use called The History of Castlevania Symphony of the Night, and that is by Chris B. Crisps. Like
Crispy
Chris? Yeah, B, the letter B, and then Crisps. That's pretty fun. So I'll put that
I like it
on the sources channel in the Discord. But let's start with those grime facts. So it's developed once again by Konami. It originally came out on the PlayStation in Japan on March 20th, 1997, October 2nd, 1997 in North America, and November 1st, 1997 in the PAL region. It then came out on the Sega Saturn in Japan on June 25th, 1998. Yeah, and there's some changes to the Sega Saturn version that we'll talk about. And then there's also an Xbox 360 version that came out on March 21st, 2007.
I think that was Xbox Arcade, right? I think it was downloadable.
Yeah, it was downloadable. And then there's the PlayStation Portable version, or PSP, that came out also in 2007. And then PlayStation 4 had like a reboot, not a reboot. Like I guess it would be like an HD version, I guess is what you would call it, on October 26, 2018. And the most recent release was on Android and iOS on March 4th, 2020.
Oh, wow.
I would say, like, if you don't mind playing a phone game, that might be the best way to play it, unless you have a PS4. I think a PS4 would be a better experience than a phone just because of controls and stuff. But hey, you know.
I love phone games.
You do you know? Do whatever you want to do. It's your life. I'm just here next to it. So, okay. Number of copies sold. So this is kind of interesting because the sales at first for this game were not very good. Like, it started off really slow, and then it picked up, and we'll talk about why it picked up. But it ended up happening is the PlayStation and the Sega Saturn versions sold 225,862 units in Japan, which is very specific. It's a very specific number now that I think about it. And then the PlayStation version sold 477,304 units in the United States. So that's a total of 703,000 units in the United States, which is pretty good. Not amazing, but pretty good, you know. Genre or gameplay style, this is the action platformer, the Metroidvania, if you will. Awards and accolades or groundbreaking achievements, well, it won some Game of the Year awards. The Game of the Year and Best Sequel by Electronic Gaming Monthly. The year it came out in 97, it won the Game of the Year by PlayStation Magazine in its list of top 10 games of 1997. Castlevania Symphony of the Night also was nominated for Console Adventure Game of the Year at the inaugural AIAS Interactive Achievement Awards, which we now know as the DICE Awards. So that's kind of cool. Like the first year the DICE Awards essentially happened.
All right.
This is also on just so many top 100 games lists of all time or on PlayStation or whatever that I just didn't even include them. If you want to go look at that, you can go spend hours looking at that, okay? We're not about that right now. We got to get to the history of it. But
that's right.
The average time to complete from howlongtobeat.com is 8.5 to 16 hours, depending on if you're a completionist. This game does have a Metacritic score, which is exciting. So the PlayStation version is a 93 out of 100. The Xbox 360 version is an 89 out of 100. And the iOS is 88 out of 100, you know? So maybe it's better to play it on phones.
Pretty good phone game.
Pretty solid phone game indeed, Tyler. So the plot of this game, well, it is a direct sequel to Castlevania Rondo of Blood, and it takes place 4 years after Castlevania Rondo of Blood ends in 1796. Richter Belmont goes missing, and Dracula's castle reappears. Ooh, scary.
Ooh, spooky.
Yeah, right? You scared? I'm really setting the mood,
I'm very
right?
scared. Yeah.
Good. Because Alucard, which as we all know is Dracula spelled backwards, so it must be Dracula's son, arrives at the castle to destroy it because daddy issues, okay? And there he meets Maria Renard. Remember her? She was the playable character in Rondo of Blood, who is related to the Belmont, and she is there looking for Richter. And then they end up finding Richter, and the reason that the castle is back is because Richter wants to get Dracula back because he needs an enemy to fight. It's a very weird thing. So wait a second. So it's like, oh, I need an enemy to fight, so I got to do this. And they're all like, huh? And then, ooh, is there spooky mind control involved? You bet there is. There totally is. So after they discover that Richter has spooky mind control taking place in his brain, they have to confront that, and then they have to fight Dracula, and it's just, it's Castlevania. Okay. So it's pretty much what it is. I don't really want to go farther than that because I don't really want to spoil anything in this game, because even though this game is like super duper old and we always say the game came out like 20 years ago or whatever, this one I feel like is still relevant, I guess.
Because it keeps coming out on stuff. I just looked it up on the App Store too. It's only $3 on your iPhone.
Yeah,
so even if it's a bad phone game, I mean, you're not out of a lot.
I might as well just get it because I would probably play it on my phone too. I just am looking for no more excuses to be on my telephone, honestly.
Yeah, no, that's a good.
Also, I call it a telephone still, so that's how you know I'm old. So, but this game, it's. You're fighting Dracula. The biggest difference, and we're going to talk about why that is when we get to the development, but the biggest difference is you are playing as Alucard in this. You are not playing as Belmont.
Okay.
So it's a pretty big deal that they switched it up. But here are some gameplay things that I think are neat about Symphony of the Night. The game is non-linear, as are most good Castlevania games. And the castle is inaccessible to a lot of places until you get certain abilities and items to get through it, which is pretty fun. Like you can turn into a bat or a wolf or a mist.
Whoa, that sounds crazy.
Classic vampire stuff. There's also the player characters like use a whip, but this one you can actually use a sword because you're playing as Alucard, and you also have a bunch of magic and cool stuff. Season of the Night. Gosh, I'm still in like Zelda mode. Remember when it was like Seasons of this or Oracle of Seasons and all that stuff? Symphony of the Night includes an inventory and role-playing game elements, as in you can get XP in this.
Ooh,
and level
everybody
up.
knows that's the secret to keeping people around.
Yeah, so
give them some
Alucard,
progress bars to fill up.
That's right. You give them something to grind for, and they're all about it. So Alucard actually has hit points that go up as he levels up. There are also 4 other attributes: strength, defense, intelligence, and luck. And luck is just the frequency of items being dropped by enemies. So it's actually kind of a good thing because you need items to beat this game. It's important. Defeating monsters actually gives Alucard experience points, and he levels up after reaching a predetermined amount. And you just kind of increase your attributes. I couldn't figure out if you could customize your attributes. I think you just level up and your character's stats go up.
You just get better when you level up.
You just get better. Yeah.
I kind of appreciate the simplicity behind that because it feels like sometimes when you give you a choice, you can mess it up.
Yeah. There's not builds in this. It's just you level up, you get stronger. Good job. Keep playing. Alucard actually has access to magic in this. Okay. So you can have spells. And the crazy part about the magic in Castlevania Symphony of the Night is at the beginning of the game, you have all the spells and you have a list of all the spells and how to cast them because you cast them in Street Fighter-esque controllers, like up, up, right, right, down, down, X, Y, or whatever. You have all those unlocked at the beginning of the game. You just don't have enough magic points to cast some of them.
Oh, okay.
So as you level up and you get more magic points, it also makes it so you can cast those spells more times, giving you more incentive to level up. During the course of the game, Alucard also can summon familiars, which is really cool. So you can summon a bat, or it's kind of like a fire skull, but I think it's meant to be a ghost, or a fairy. There's all sorts of things you can have as your familiar to help you out in fighting and exploring around and stuff. And the funny part about these familiars is they were in way late on the development train. They almost didn't make the game, and they're definitely a part of the game that I feel like a lot of people really like. So it's we're kind of lucky they're there, you know?
Yeah, it's funny how those things that that make it in sort of last minute become the fan favorites. That's how the multiplayer mode in GoldenEye was on Nintendo 64. They kind of slapped it on there at the last minute, and everybody loved it.
That's so funny. What if they didn't have that in GoldenEye? Where would first-person shooters be now if we didn't have?
Wow.
If we didn't have
no
slappers only, yeah.
That's a great question because the game itself is fine, but it's the multiplayer that really is where it's fun.
Oh yeah, big head mode, slappers only,
paintball
all
mode.
Rockets. Yeah, you turn on all the rockets, and then the frame rate just freaks out. It's so fun. Okay, so alternative modes to gameplay in Symphony of the Night can happen too, as in you can play as other characters. For example, you can play as Richter Belmont if you change the username to Richter Belmont.
Interesting.
Yeah, and when you play as Richter, you get to use the whip and like the various sub weapons in the game. In the Sega Saturn version that I spoke of earlier, you can actually play as Maria Renard. She is a playable character.
Oh.
The Sega Saturn version also added new areas to the game, new areas to the castle, and new bosses to fight in the castle. And here is my last cool gameplay fact. And I heard it called the Mirror Castle. I heard it called the Upside Down Castle. There is technically 2 castles in the game, both the same size, and one of them is a mirrored version of the other that is upside down. And it doubles the size of the game because that castle is the full castle, just inverted. And you explore it and there's new enemies inside it. But here's the crazy part about it. You could play the entire game not knowing it's there, is what I heard. Like, it's possible to play the game and beat the game without going to the Upside Down Castle, which I think is pretty interesting.
That's neat.
It makes me wonder if there's someone that's actually played this game and beaten it and been like, oh, I love Symphony of the Night. And they talk it up with all their friends and they love it. And then in reality, they've never been to the Upside Down Mirror Castle.
Yep, that would be me probably.
Me too, totally. That's a total me move right there. Okay. So let's talk about development. First thing we want to talk about is how this game actually wasn't Symphony of the Night when it started. It was originally started in 1994, development at Konami as a Castlevania game for the Sega 32X that was called The Bloodletting, which I think
that sounds
is
spookier.
a terrible name for a video game. It's so scary, right?
Mm-hmm.
Bloodletting. I don't like it. It freaks me out. Okay, but that's my opinion. So they even got so far as they made a playable prototype of the game, but then the Sega 32X expansion just flopped so hard.
Yeah,
Like
sure did.
it was real bad. And that's when Konami decided to completely shift focus off the Sega 32X and go to the PlayStation, because the Sony PlayStation was the hot new system and they knew like this is going to be it for us. And they actually were able to take some bits and pieces from the Bloodletting and move it over into Symphony of the Night. So unlike the previous Castlevania games that we have covered here, a previous Castlevania dev did take the lead on Symphony of the Night. I know last episode I was talking about Castlevania. I mentioned how a lot of the time it was like brand new people being thrown in to develop a Castlevania game. Not this time. Toru Hagihara, the director of Rondo of Blood, was actually brought in to direct and produce Symphony of the Night. And then, in the middle of development, Hagihara was promoted to the head of the development division at Konami. So he now had big business on his plate. Okay, he couldn't do it anymore. So what he did is he took a young programmer named Koji Igarashi, aka Iga, and made them the assistant director to take over all of like running the game, essentially.
Wow.
And Iga's story is actually pretty interesting. He got really interested in video games when there was this game called Crazy Climber that was released on PC that he played at a friend's house. And then he taught himself how to program BASIC and assembly language using a friend's computer and a demo computer at a store. Like he went to the store and just used the computer because he couldn't afford one, you know?
Yeah. But he's still I think about that kind of stuff sometimes. I'm like, I should learn how to be a programmer. I'm like, no, but I don't have all the things I need, or I make excuses, and like this kid's just learning how at the store because he doesn't even have a computer. He's still a programming master. That's amazing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, I'd had to take a whole darn class. It's pretty nuts. Although it's changed a lot since then. I think
that's true. That's true. It's not as simple as it was back then.
Yeah, so he actually graduated college, and then he got hired by Konami after college and worked on a dating sim titled Tokimeki Memorial, which is a pretty big game in the dating sim genre. Like, if we ever did a history of dating sims, that would actually be a very big, important, influential title we could talk about. And that game was a huge success. Fun story. Iga hated working on it. I would say hated. I would say actually didn't really care about the material. Like he just wasn't really passionate about it. So he used the leverage of him being the main programmer of that very successful game to switch departments. And he chose to work on a series he always loved, Castlevania. And that's how he moved over to work on Castlevania Symphony of the Night. So the main reason Symphony of the Night is the game that we know and love today is because IGA knew they needed to do something fresh. And here is a quote from IGA. Quote, action games could be cleared in a short time, but I wished to create a game that could be enjoyed for a long time. And like those previous Castlevania games were like one and done. He's not wrong here, you know? But there was one exception to a game that was very one and done, and that was Simon's Quest. Remember Castlevania 2, Simon's Quest on the NES, where they made it kind of weird. You could talk to the NPCs, and they'd sometimes lie to you, and you could like explore. Igarashi decided to push the game in that direction more than the older ways to do it. And the first major change he did is the environment, taking inspiration from Super Metroid and The Legend of Zelda.
Oh, yeah.
Igarashi wanted the castle to be open. So, like, it's an open castle. You just can't reach certain areas until you get the correct item or go through the game far enough to get the ability. So, essentially, he took Simon's Quest and the non-linearity of it and still put it all in the castle. So, it's just in the castle versus exploring the world, which I think was kind of a problem with Simon's Quest.
Yeah.
Is Simon's Quest was like this big journey, but it's on the NES, so it doesn't feel like a big journey. So instead, let's push it. The big journey is just in this giant, what feels like infinite, huge castle. And that's what they went with. So that encouraged actually like exploration and replayability, and it also increased the length of the game. So that's what you needed at this point. The other major change were the role-playing elements, and the reason that they put the role-playing elements in the game is they just straight up wanted to make it less difficult. Like Castlevania,
so you could like you could get stronger, and that would make it easier and feel good about making it easier.
Exactly, because Castlevania was known like by everyone at this time. It was a very difficult game series. Like the old Castlevanias on Nintendo are very hard and unforgiving. And here's Iga's quote. He says, quote, I wanted to change the impression that Castlevania was a difficult action game. When we decided to adopt RPG elements, we agreed that users would deserve something good when beating enemies. So I thought of experience points, end quote. So players became more powerful as they progressed. So they not only would they'll hit harder, but that like coupled with them just naturally getting better at a video game, you know, like you do when you play Mario, just you get better at jumping as you play along. But now you get better at jumping and you hit harder. So it's going to make it even easier for you to progress.
Nice.
Another quote from Iga is, I thought that even the users who are not good at playing action games would be able to clear the game if they adopted the system, end quote. Okay. And I think that's true. I think he was very successful in that. And I think that's the kind of thing that I enjoy in a video game. Like when I'm playing a game, I want to feel like I'm getting more powerful over time, which I think is why Destiny was so appealing to me in the beginning. You know, we should call this podcast Mike Keeps Talking About Destiny. And I'm sorry, everybody, but that's like a main relating experience, I think, to like the style of video game is like getting better and being stronger as you go. It's a good example of it. Or like even like Guacamelee, which is also a Metroidvania game. Like in Guacamelee, there's areas that you're like, I wonder how I get there, and then you get that like 3 hours from now and you're like, oh, I'm so powerful, I could do all this crazy stuff. So yeah, it's cool. So there's also a lot of items that you can get, like powerful like one-shot weapons and potions and food, and this not only gives the game more depth, but it also it makes it easier, you know, gives the player a little more hope, which is nice.
Well, it's a different philosophy than what a lot of games would have done in the 90s too, which is like, well, if you can't beat it, it's because you're not good enough. And if you're not good enough, then I guess that sucks. And so to make a game with a thought of, no, I want everyone to be able to complete this game. And so I'm going to put systems in this to make it so that anybody can complete it is cool and different than what other developers would have done at the time period, probably.
You telling me you didn't like the get good mentality?
No, not a fan personally.
Yeah, me neither. I'm like, I shared a TikTok the other day of a streamer being like, we should all be fine with just playing games on easy mode. I'm like, it's true. Yeah, we got nothing to prove anymore. Play the game on story mode. Have fun. Enjoy yourself. It's a video game. Yep. All right. So here's another cool fact about Symphony of the Night. There originally was a dark and holy alignment system in the game.
Whoa.
So the idea was if you used holy items like the crucifix or holy water to kill monsters, you would become more holy aligned. And if you used magic more often with those like crazy button combos I was talking about, which were more powerful, you become dark aligned. And the ending was actually supposed to change based on if you used holy items or darkness items. But this whole idea was scrapped because of just like time and making it work. And so that what ended up staying were the magic items and the magic spells. Like those stayed in the game, but the whole alignment system was just tossed out the window, which I think, pulling off alignment in a video game is very hard to do. And I think the only successful, you either got to go like super ridiculous with it, like with Fable, where you straight up grow horns if you're bad, or it's like Mass Effect, where it affects your decisions down the road, but it's not like there's no like good or bad. It acknowledges a gray area in between.
Yeah. I don't mind it as a gameplay element to be like, well, if you want this specific ending, you limit yourself to these items, regardless of whether they're like morally good or not. I'm not as interested in that, but like you have to use this subset of items more than the other ones, and that'll get you one ending, and then switching and using the others gets you a different ending. So like the game, as you play it twice and you play with those different items, you have a different experience because the items are different that you're using. And I kind of like that idea too, regardless of morality or good or bad,
Yeah, I agree with you. That is fun. It does add more replayability to it. So, all right, but they don't have it in there. So, sorry, everybody. So, now there's one of the biggest changes in this entire Symphony of the Night game is you do not play by default a Belmont. In fact, you are there to rescue Richter. Spoilers after you realize he's under mind control. So, the reason for this, Igarashi said, is, quote, I chose a character that had a special link to the previous Castlevania titles. Also, and this helps too, that Igarashi's favorite game in the Castlevania series is Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse, which is the first appearance of Alucard. So it's fitting that the player plays as Dracula's son. This also gave them more freedom to do stuff too, because when you're a Belmont, you got to use a whip and you got to use items. But if you're Alucard, who's part vampire, hey, guess what? Now you can turn into a bat.
That's neat.
Now you can cast spells. Now you can turn into mist or whatever. Like it frees up the developers to do a lot more cool stuff, which they did, which made the game great and what we know and love. Igarashi was nervous about the decision to make Alucard into the, I'm really just killing it with the speech today, into the game and like to not have the Belmont in there. And I'm just going to read this paragraph from the push square feature because I think they do a way better job explaining this than I ever could. So here we go. Resurrecting the tragic prince proved to be an inspired move, but Iga reveals that at the time he was concerned that such a decision would anger the fans, quote, personally, I liked Alucard very much, and it was totally fine with me, but I presumed that those who had been fans for a long time would be angry since it was the first time for the series to have a non-whip using character as a hero, end quote. He needn't have worried. The Japanese title was Akumajo Dracula X. I used X to show that it would be apart from the mainstream of the series. But surprisingly, it has become the mainstream. That's what Iga just said. That was a quote. He comments with a degree of satisfaction, Alucard is now regarded as one of the most popular characters in the Castlevania universe, and Iga is well aware of the impact he had on the triumph of Symphony of the Night. Quote, Alucard was very cool, and that is why Symphony of the Night has been received so favorably, end quote. So he was nervous, but I think the fans, I think calling it Dracula X in Japan, set it apart. Mm-hmm. But it didn't even need to be, in the States, they just called it Castlevania Symphony of the Night. They didn't even say this was a side story. And I think it worked out.
And yeah, like he said, it is the Castlevania game now, so it's basically the main story. Everything else is kind of a side story now.
Yeah, take that, old Castlevanias. How do you feel, Trevor Belmont? What kind of name is Trevor? Okay, Simon. Simon. Yeah, that's true. These names are fun to say. Okay, so the audio of the game, the music, was composed once by renowned composer Michiru Yamane, and she combined a fusion of rock, jazz, and classical styles that to most people would seem like a weird combination, but for this game, it totally worked. In the Push Square article, they bring up a very interesting question, which is how do you find the tone for the music? Also, they asked, did Igarashi feel the expectation of oral excellence imposed limitations on his development? And Igarashi's answer was, quote, "The music direction has never led the creation of the game. I have always asked Michiru to compose music in accordance with the game. She always coordinated with the development team and composed music from the image of the stages," end quote. And I just think it's a good example here of how music in this case complements the story and the setting versus the other way around. Because there are games where like I think the music takes the lead. You know what I mean? Like in those games we talked about, like that Tetris Effect game.
Oh,
like
I love Tetris Effect.
I know, but that's like a musically driven game, right?
Yeah.
Like without the music in it, it wouldn't.
Oh, it's just Tetris without the music. Like the whole point of playing that game is the visual and audio portion of it, and it's actually kind of cool that it's just Tetris. Otherwise, because I can focus on the other stuff because I know how to play Tetris. I've been playing Tetris for 30 years, right?
Been playing Tetris his whole life since Jaybird. Been playing Tetris.
That's right.
Oh, what if they made Jaybird Effect? Okay, so just throw that idea in there. All right. The last thing that I want to talk about, like development-wise, is Ayami Kojima's artwork. Now, she was brought in to give like fresh life to the characters and Iga's vision for Castlevania, and you can see that right away. And the craziest part about this whole thing is it was her first ever foray into video game art, and she just knocked it out of the park. Like she's one of the top artists in the field now. And I don't know a lot about art, and it's really hard to describe it, but she does this technique that uses like three things, like classical paint styling, like some 3D, I guess, I don't know if it's like cut it. They called it like cutting, or again, I am not an artist here, but if someone knows more about art and would like to explain this, it just looks really cool. It's like classical paintings, but with a twist that I just can't really describe. It looks so creepy and it's just so cool. And if you bought the game in Japan or Europe, you actually had a limited edition like manga art book sent to you with the game in it, and also with the, not sent to you, but included with the game. And you also had the soundtrack included too. So like they knew right away, like, hey, like the limited edition of this game, people are going to want the art and they're going to want the music because it's so good. And I'm just going to say, if you are interested in this, you should definitely go Google Ayami Kojima's artwork because it is really good. There's also some articles about how she does it. And I didn't want to get into all that here because this is not the history of art, but it's very interesting. Well, it kind of is, I guess. This is video games. Video games are art. Okay, everybody? Don't catch me saying that. Okay. So also to note with the visuals and the art style, the PlayStation was the all-powerful console at this point, right? Like everyone's like, oh, it's so amazing. And what's crazy about Castlevania Symphony of the Night is everyone was working on 3D games, but because they were doing this 2D game on this all-powerful console, it looks amazing.
Yeah, because they got to do like, it was like peak pixel art, and they had all the storage space they needed.
Yeah, it's so pretty. Like go watch a YouTube video of this, or like go, if you have access to it, play it for sure, or even play it on the phone. Like $3, you can play the game. Like you should go play it. It's like so beautiful, and the backgrounds are stunning. It's just, I can't put into words how great it is. It's just like the epitome of pixel art is what I would say. It holds up. This game holds up. It doesn't look old. It doesn't feel old. It's great.
Yeah.
So this next section I'm going to call All Little Details, because there's a list in the YouTube video where he lists off the weird details that he noticed in Castlevania. And these are only some. And I just thought I would list them here. These aren't Easter eggs. This is just how much detail was put into this video game. So if you sit in a chair, Alucard will fall asleep. Little Z's will start popping up next to his head. It's funny. If an enemy has an animal companion and you kill that animal, the enemy reacts and gets sad.
Aw.
Yeah, right? It's kind of sweet. If you use an item called the Sire item, it shows a flash of the real Vlad Tepes, aka Vlad Dracul, like the historical figure that Dracula is based on. It's like from a painting of him. Yeah, it's creepy. In a conversation with an NPC, Alucard like references Trevor Belmont's sprite from Castlevania 3, and like a thought bubble pops up with his sprite and what it looks like. You fight all of Castlevania 1's bosses in this game, like they all come back and you
nice
fight them.
throwback.
Yellow Medusa heads will occasionally turn Alucard not just into stone but into a gargoyle, which is like kind of a cool detail. The peanuts are a food item in the game, but in order to get the health benefit, you have to throw it up in the air and line it up to catch it in your mouth. The outer wall of the castle has a family of birds that when you walk by, they're just chicks. And as you come back to that area, you can watch them grow up, which I think is an interesting detail. Yeah. There are these enemies called Skelerangs that throw boomerangs at you. But if you get really close to them, they cower in fear and won't attack you because they're scared of you. They only want to throw boomerangs from far away. There's an area of the game where you go through like a prison or a dungeon and there's zombie prisoners and they rattle the bars as you go by, just like a fun detail. The Venus flytrap like enemies slowly turn red as they feed on your blood. Like they start as purple and they turn red if they hit you enough times. This is the best one. This is hands down the best detail. Alucard's bat familiar, the little bat that follows you around as your familiar, will fall in love with Alucard if he turns into a bat. And then when he turns back into a human again, the bat gets very confused. It's the best detail in this entire video game, I think.
So sad.
Yeah, the bat like has hearts pop up next to it, and then when you turn back into Alucard, there's like question marks. Like it's confused about what happened. Those are the fun little details. There's so many more in this game. I'm trying to do it justice. I mean, the legacy of this game is just bananas. Talking about those sales again, it was a slow burn. And the crazy part about it is the way that Symphony of the Night became so successful, not just critically, but sales-wise, word of mouth. Like people telling people about how good this game was is what slowly built and drove the sales of all the copies of the game.
That's
which
awesome.
is just something really cool that you don't hear about anymore. I guess now it would be like streamers would be that way of doing it, like with the games like Phasmophobia and Fall Guys, you get like the streamers like getting really into it, and that's what drives the sales of a game. But this was like 1997, so this is just people that really like PlayStation games being like, you have to play this game, it's so cool, it's so good, and like that's what drove the sales. After this, Konami would try their hand at 3D Castlevanias, and that is an entirely different show. We're not covering that today because I need to do that. That dumpster fire needs justice. I'm giving to it.
I can't wait.
It's not good. I actually might save it because I think we're going to do at some point a worst list, and Castlevania 64 might be on some of those worst lists. So we'll see what happens. But I did want to note that this game was like a labor of love for everyone that was on it. And I think that's the most important thing to get across is they spent a lot of time making the game. We talk about dev burnout, and they noted in like both the article and the video that I watched that the whole dev team for Symphony of the Night like always stayed late and worked on the game, not because they had to, but because they wanted to, like they loved it that much. Mm-hmm. And I think this is just one of those great examples of like a development team that really loved the material they were making, and it shows in the game and when it came out and how great it was. And after Symphony of the Night, Iga would go on to make a ton of 2D Castlevania games for like Game Boy Advance and Nintendo DS. And those would be successful, albeit they would slowly like lose quality occasionally because you could tell they were just throwing them out there for money. And he would eventually leave Konami and start his own company called Artplay. But his vision for the successor to Symphony of the Night is called Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. And that game was released in 2019. And that game is on Steam. It's on Xbox. I think it's on PlayStation. It's on like everything. It's an indie game technically, and it's crazy highly reviewed. And it was on Steam on sale today. Like as we're recording, it's on sale. But yeah, you should give it a go. If you've played Symphony of the Night, I would suggest that game. Give it a go. It looks super cool and super fun. But yeah, so that's Symphony of the Night. It's just a really good game overall. And the people that made it loved it. And I think it's a really nice thing. So Tyler, what you been playing?
Well, let's see. This week, still working on Persona 5 Strikers. Having a lot of fun with that. And I'm almost done with the second dungeon. And I think there are 8 in the game. So I'm about 11 or 12 hours in. So this is probably a 50-hour adventure ahead of me. So I've been playing that. I've been playing League of Legends most nights, and now that League of Legends Wild Rift is out on the phone, I've been playing that, putting games in on that when you get a few minutes because they're much quicker. Full disclosure, I work at Riot Games, so I'm not trying to shill my own stuff, but that's what I've been playing. So that's been fun. Otherwise, I think that's about it. Because most of my time is spent on Persona right now when I get some gaming time.
Persona Strikers, right?
Persona 5 Strikers, yeah. What are you playing this week, Mike?
Well, I beat Wolfenstein: The New Order last night, and I have to say, very good game. Very fun game. I was really enjoying it. It's to the point where I'm like, should I now play all these Wolfenstein games that they're on Game Pass for free?
I mean, they're all free.
Is yes, but not until I play BioShock Infinite, which is what I plan on getting into this week. I plan on going back to BioShock and playing BioShock Infinite. I am on spring break from work, so I am going to be playing that hopefully a lot this week. I'm still in school, like for my own like assignments for my boot camp class, but I got the week off, so I'm going to try to hit the old BioShock 3 pretty hard here. Put on some headphones, turn off the lights, try to get into it, get scared.
I'm excited for you. That one's not as spooky as the other two. Yeah,
that's true. It's more action-y if I remember correctly.
It's still good though.
I played the base campaign and beat it. It was a long time ago though. So I'm kind of excited to play it almost like new in a way.
Gosh, that game's coming up on a decade old now. Holy moly.
Yeah, and then I'm going to play the DLC. I've never played any of the DLC, so I'm super excited to play the BioShock 3 DLC. But yeah, that's what I'm planning on playing this week. And I've played Wolfenstein, and I've been playing League with you, trying to get better. It's a struggle.
Oh, you had a couple games where you carried us, though.
Oh, I mean, last night I had arguably one of the best games of my life against a Riven who usually just like is a character that destroys me in lane, and they went 0-10 against me, and I was like, yes, okay, it felt really good. So I was talking about it to Tyler and people. I'm like, League is such a weird game because I have games where I feel the worst I've ever felt in my entire life. And then you have games where you feel like you're doing that to someone else and it feels so good.
Yeah.
And it's so messed up. But
yeah. It's sometimes it feels like a zero-sum game of like, if I'm having fun, it's because other people aren't having fun.
Yeah, it's just so interesting. But I really like it. It really like there's so much to think about when you're playing it. And I think that's what's exciting to me. And I'm really happy I didn't get into that when I was like younger, because I think it would have been a game that took over my life in a way, and I'm glad as an adult now it doesn't take over my life that much. I mean, I still play it like every night, but it doesn't take over my life that much.
Yeah, the quest for mastery is fun, and it only takes a couple of really good games that like keeps you chasing that high a little bit, I think.
Definitely. So we got some emails to read though. You want to read some emails?
Yeah, I can read an email here. We got one from Dark Paul.
Ooh, let's read Dark Paul's email.
Dark Paul says, "Good morning, Krusty Crew." I don't know why we're being called. Oh, that's probably a SpongeBob reference.
Yeah.
Dark Paul here. I know I just sent an email last week, but I couldn't ignore talking about Metroid Prime. Christmas of 2002, I remember noticing I had mostly gotten clothes the whole morning while my sisters got a bunch of cool toys and stuff. I was still very grateful, but I noticed nonetheless. My dad, being a cool guy, tells me, "I forgot a present. Could you grab it out of the closet by the kitchen?" I open the closet to find a brand new GameCube bundled with Super Mario Sunshine, and on top of that, a brand new copy of Metroid Prime.
That's a banger of a present right there.
It really is. And nice, good, well played on Dad's side for like giving you all the ones where you're like, thanks, especially when you're a kid, you're getting clothes. You're like, this is fine. I know that you care about me. Thank you, but this is not what I wanted. And so the dad to just like keep a poker face through all that and then be like, go grab the good present from the closet that's some good dad work there.
Good dad work. Solid dad work.
Yeah. So he says, I freaked the heck out, of course. Like Tyler, I was wowed by the realism of the game, but me being 9 at the time, it was also very scary to me. I remember no matter how much I played the opening level, I could never get past the Parasite Queen. Was frustrated and put the game on the shelf. It wasn't until probably 2 to 3 years later when my mind had developed a little more that I decided to give it another go. I realized that as a kid, having no attention span to read anything, I wasn't locking onto the queen, and more importantly, I wasn't dodging her attacks by dashing. I ended up beating this boss that seemed impossible as a kid in a matter of minutes. I went on to beat the game and it was cemented as my favorite game for a very long time, especially the soundtrack and isolating vibe. Tyler, I can't remember if you said you beat Metroid Prime 2 or not, but if not, please give it another shot. The game is tough and the Dark World can be annoying, but it's very rewarding for its difficulty. I have not beaten Metroid Prime 2. I played a little bit of it, was turned off by some of the changes that they made. I think I just wasn't ready for another Metroid game, and so I put it on the shelf, and then I let someone borrow it, and then that guy moved away, and I lost my copy of Metroid Prime 2 forever.
Wow, that's the worst feeling ever.
Yeah. Yeah, so I do want to play it, and I will probably play it.
Can we all
soon.
email that guy and bug him to give you your copy back?
Yeah, probably. I'll just give it. I don't know this guy's email. This was 15 years ago.
That'd be so funny if 15 years from now he gets like a bunch of Facebook messages. Give Tyler back his copy of Metroid Prime 2.
There's more to Dark Paul's email here. He switches subjects here a little bit. I couldn't remember what genre that I changed my mind on as per your question that we asked last week, if there's a specific game that made you change your mind on a genre. But something interesting did come up. I recently was at Barnes & Noble by the mall I work at and was curious if they had The Ultimate History of Video Games by Stephen L. Kent. So I asked the clerk if it was available. The clerk then told me that it hadn't come out yet and it looks like it was coming out in April. I was confused, but I thought maybe it was possible there was a newer edition coming out or something. So she turned the screen so that I could see. What I saw was that Stephen L. Kent was actually working on a Volume 2. Actually, I'm not sure if it's specifically him or someone else, but there is an Ultimate History of Video Games Volume 2 coming out in April, and it's supposed to pick up right where the first book left off. I was curious if you guys knew about this, because I never would have unless I happened to be in Barnes & Noble, I guess. Obviously, you've covered everything since the end of the book on your own, but I was curious if you would revisit it and follow along with the book given the opportunity. Just thought I'd bring it up. Hope y'all are doing well. The answer to that question, Mike, do you want to tell him?
Yes, we will be covering the second book. I actually got tweeted about this a couple months ago, and we are going to be covering it. I've already pre-ordered my copy, and I am currently trying, like once a week, I spend about 20 minutes trying to find Stephen L. Kent's email address because I want him to be on the show, and I can't find it. This man is an internet mystery. I have no idea how to find him. And I've even gone so far as to like look up his publisher to see if I could find the publisher's email, but I couldn't find it. So I want to cover this book and I want to talk to Stephen L. Kent very badly because this is like the origin story of our podcast was this book.
That would be so fun.
And it would be really cool to have him on here just to talk about like what his favorite moments are, like researching this book or the old book. I think that would just be really cool. So we do know about it. We are going to cover it. I don't know if we're going to cover it in the same capacity that we did with the first book because we, like Dark Paul said, we have covered like all that other stuff. So, but yes, it's on our radar 100%. So,
definitely.
and
at least going to read it, right?
Yeah, and we're glad you brought it up because I brought it up on Twitter with the person I was talking to about it, and then I completely forgot to mention it in the Discord or anything. So, yes is the answer.
Yeah. There's a little bit more here to Dark Paul's email. He says, P.S. One of my favorite games is Shenmue for Dreamcast. I had the pleasure of playing the remastered version on PS4 and the subsequent sequels. Have either of you played this game? It definitely scratches a very strange itch and probably isn't for everyone, but I think something about how ambitious it was for the time and my general love for Sega makes the game somewhat magical to me. That is, if you can get past the super compressed audio, which is laughable at times. I know you covered it briefly on the history portion of the Dreamcast, but from what I hear, it might be interesting to take a closer look because of the grandiose development at the time and the groundbreaking nature of the game. Not to add to the list, which I'm sure now resembles Santa's naughty list and nice list in length. That's true. We do have a pretty large list of things to cover.
The list is insane, but yeah. I have not played. I haven't played a Dreamcast ever. Another thing about it. I don't think ever. I think it was a generation that was just skipped in Eagle River, Alaska when I was growing up. Like no one owned a Dreamcast. So
you just went from the N64 to the GameCube and skipped that whole part?
Yeah, pretty much. I think it really was. And
it came out at a weird time.
It's because like growing up in Alaska, really everything was like behind, you know, like we had 3 of the last 4 blockbusters. So yes, I have not played a Dreamcast. And when I actually went back up there, they had Stained playing on the radio, and I was like, this place hasn't changed since I was like growing up. So
I love it.
Yeah, I need to play a Dreamcast. I got to get my hands on one. You know,
yeah,
when I become
they're really fun because you can make easy backup copies of your games for Dreamcast.
No, because the piracy is so bad on it, you can just copy the game.
Yeah, you basically could just hit the burn button. Of course, only play games that you legally own, backups or otherwise, but it is very easy to play backup games on your Dreamcast.
That's good. That's good. They make it so you can have backups. It's nice. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, Dark Paul, for the email. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dark Paul.
I'm going to read this next email from Jimmy in Sweden. Hello, Mike and Tyler. Thanks again for an awesome and entertaining show. You were asking about genres of games that people didn't used to like, but then played a game and that all changed. I was never that into RPGs or JRPGs. I only ever enjoyed Pokemon and Paper Mario, and they aren't your typical RPGs. I always felt that they were too long and boring, and I didn't want to sink all that time into one game. That all changed last year when I played and finished Dragon Quest XI-S. I had so much fun and loved every minute of it. It doesn't do anything groundbreaking, but everything it does to perfection. That led me to playing Final Fantasy VII Remake, and then this year I finished Persona 5 Royal. Love them. I've recently started Ni no Kuni, Wrath of the White Witch, and thoroughly enjoy it as well. I guess what I want to say is, thank you, Dragon Quest, for opening up a new world of awesome RPGs for me, and thank you, Smash Bros, for making me want to check Dragon Quest out. Keep up the good work, Jimmy from Sweden. I have never played a Dragon Quest game.
Me neither. My little brother he's played them all. I think he's played every Dragon Quest game. He's real big into Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy. So he's got all of the remakes of those games and stuff. He's been really into them, and I also have never played one. But 11S is on Game Pass, and I believe they're like Final Fantasy, where each numbered one is like a totally different story, different world, just similar.
That's what I was going to ask, if I have to play the old ones to play the new ones.
I don't think so.
If that's the case, then I will put this on my Game Pass Trello board, games to play.
Yeah, I'm going to download it and then not play it. That's what I do with Game Pass games. I download a lot of games and don't play them.
I don't even want to look up on howlongtobeat.com Dragon Quest XI-S is, because it's going to make my heart hurt, I think.
It's probably higher than 50 hours.
Yeah, that's my guess. So, but thank you, Jimmy from Sweden, and I'm glad that you got back into RPGs because of this, because that's cool. That's really cool. I also love that. I think Smash Brothers does introduce people to new games and stuff, you know? Like, I never would have known what Fire Emblem was unless I played Super Smash Brothers.
Yeah,
so.
And Earthbound too, because the first one had Ness in it. It has like a really tough to get unlockable character.
Yeah, I had Ness. That was so fun. You'd shoot his like up B jump move was so weird because you shot that thing out of your head and you had to hit yourself to fly forward.
Yeah,
it was all pro moves if you could pull it off. All right, thank you for the email, Jimmy. And then you want to read Burger Champ's email?
Yeah, we got one last email here from Burger Champ. It says, greetings and salutations, good sirs. After more than a year of isolation and being homebodies, I'm sure you're both raring and ready to travel. In the meantime, video games are what we've got for escape. What game that you've played would you like to have a real-life souvenir from? What would your souvenir be? The bandage from King Hippo's belly? Mega Man's sweaty helmet? Pokemon meat? Ugh. Where would you proudly display it?
Ever. Pokemon meat.
Where would you proudly display it? I could go on, but I've got to head over to the Frame Factory. I've commissioned an elaborate and gaudy frame for my degree from Codex University. Thanks again for naming me valedictorian. You're the best deans a guy could ask for. Dean you later, Burger Champ. Well, of course, you're the valedictorian, Burger Champ. You did the best in the class. That's what happens.
That's what happens, except you said Pokemon meat, so I'm going to drop you a whole letter grade just now.
Yeah. Salutatorian now? Is that lower than valedictorian? I don't know.
Where would you keep your Pokemon meat? In the freezer, I guess?
Yeah, I guess, because it would go bad, so you wouldn't want to display it, right?
I'm pretty sure I've seen an internet question that is, if you had to eat one Pokemon, which one would you choose?
Oh, like Miltank, probably. It's a cow.
Yeah, Miltank's a cow. That's the best question, you know?
Yeah.
And then you got Oddish for all you vegans out there. You know,
yep.
That's the way to do it. As far as a video game souvenir, well, I have a follow-up question to this, and that is, if I pick something that gives me powers, do I get those powers?
Oh.
Because how funny would it be to have the bee plasmid from BioShock and just shoot bees everywhere? Minus the whole going crazy and stuff. Would it be cool to shoot bees from your hand? That feels like it would get in the way, though. I would actually probably pick like the fire plasmid, you know, just so you could and the level 1 version, so you could just like light a fire, you know, be a match, light a candle. That's what I would do. But other souvenirs, the Master Sword, obviously.
Oh, that's a good choice, yeah.
I would just put it on my wall and be like, yeah, that's the Master Sword from Legend of Zelda.
Yeah.
I stole it from Link. He can't defeat Ganon, and now there's 300 more timelines. I just ruined it for everybody. What would you pick?
Well, if I could pick something that gives me powers, I'd probably pick like the Cure materia from Final Fantasy VII, so that I can do cure spells and give people health back. Heal people.
Oh, that's so nice. You're a red mage at heart.
Yeah. Cure is a white mage spell, but red mages also get it. And for something that I actually do kind of have, this is the first thing that popped to my head when this email came through was the pre-order bonus for Mirror's Edge back in 2008, so many years ago now, came with a replica of the bag that she uses when she carries her messages across, like jumping across rooftops and stuff. And it was actually a really cool bag that fit an Xbox 360 perfectly and a couple of controllers and all the cables and stuff. So I used to cart my Xbox around in the bag from Mirror's Edge, which is pretty cool.
Question, would you parkour with the bag while you were doing it? Would you go to your friend's house and parkour on the way?
I would not do that because it had an expensive Xbox in it, and that bag was not built very well. It was definitely a cheap pre-order bonus.
Ah, yes.
It would have broken if I tried to do anything crazy with it.
I love that kind of weird stuff. I got, when I bought Call of Duty World War II, it came with the Call of Duty dog tags, and I don't think I've ever opened them. They've been sitting in a Rubbermaid container somewhere in storage around here. That I'm just yeah, those pre-order. I actually, you know what? This is a good question for listeners. I like trying to end with a question for listeners. Send us an email or hit us up on Discord. What is your favorite weird pre-order bonus souvenir thing you've gotten? Because I feel like there's a lot of these, right? So someone had to have their favorite souvenir.
Yeah, there's some weird stuff too, I think.
Or just this question from Burger Champ is great too. What game that you've played would you like to have a real life souvenir from? That's a good one too. If you don't have a pre-order bonus souvenir, but you want to take a souvenir from a game. So,
I like that.
That's good. That's really good. If you want to email us, you can email us at codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com. Thank you, Burger Champ and Jimmy and Dark Paul, for the emails. You can send us a review. And when I say send us a review, I mean you could submit a review of our podcast on Apple Podcasts, or tell your friends about us, or follow us on Spotify. Any of those things helps us out a lot. Thank you so much for listening. Tyler, is there anything you want to say to the listener before we go?
No, that about covers it, I think.
All right. Well, do you want to say bye to everybody?
Yeah. Goodbye, everybody.